My coworker accused me of destroying his marriage just because I saw something I shouldn't have, but now, his wife sent me proof that he has 3 different identities. I never wanted any of this. I'm a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm in Portland, and up until 3 months ago, my biggest workplace drama was arguing over coffee brands in the break room. My name is Sarah Chin, I'm 29, and I've always been the type to mind my own business. I show up, do my work, eat lunch at my desk while scrolling through my phone and go home. No office politics, no gossip circles, nothing. But sometimes, minding your own business isn't enough to protect you from other people's chaos, and that's exactly what happened with Derek Hammond. Derek was the kind of guy everyone seemed to like at first glance. Tall, charming smile, always ready with a joke during Monday morning meetings. He'd been at the company for about 5 years, way longer than my 2, and he had this easygoing personality that made him popular with management. He talked about his wife constantly. Jessica this, Jessica that. How she made the best lasagna, how they were planning to renovate their kitchen, how lucky he was to have found his soulmate in college. It was almost too perfect, you know? Like he was trying to sell everyone on this image of the ideal husband. I never thought much of it because, again, not my business. We worked in different departments. He was in client relations, I was in design. Our paths crossed maybe twice a week, always professionally, always briefly. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. I had stayed late to finish a project for a client presentation the next morning. The office was practically empty by 7 p.m., just the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional distant sound of the cleaning crew. I was exhausted, eyes burning from staring at my screen for 10 hours straight, and I decided to take a quick walk to the parking garage to grab my phone charger from my car. Our building has this weird layout where you have to go through the back stairwell to reach the garage levels, and hardly anyone uses those stairs because the elevator is faster. As I pushed open the heavy metal door to the stairwell, I heard voices. Not just talking but intimate voices. Low, breathy, the kind of tone that makes you immediately realize you're intruding on something private. I froze. My first instinct was to back out quietly, but then I heard a familiar laugh. Derek's laugh. That same easy, charming laugh he used in meetings. Except now it sounded different. Seductive. I know I should have left right then. I know it. But something made me glance down through the gap in the stairwell railing, just one quick look to confirm what I already suspected. And there he was. Derek Hammond, loving husband who wouldn't shut up about his wife's lasagna, pressed against the wall with Monica from accounting, their hands all over each other, kissing like the world was ending. My heart started pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it. Monica was married too. I'd met her husband at the company holiday party last year, a nice guy named Tim who worked in IT for another company. They had twin daughters, maybe 6 or 7 years old. I'd seen the photos on Monica's desk. This wasn't just an affair, this was a double betrayal, and I'd just witnessed it by complete accident. I backed out of that stairwell so carefully, so quietly, holding my breath until the door clicked shut behind me. Then I practically ran back to my desk, forgot entirely about the phone charger, packed up my stuff and left through the front entrance. My hands were shaking as I drove home. I kept telling myself to forget what I'd seen, that it wasn't my problem, that getting involved would only blow up in my face. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Jessica, Derek's wife, being lied to every single day. I kept thinking about Tim, Monica's husband, probably putting those twin girls to bed while his wife was in a stairwell with another man. And I kept thinking about how everyone at work thought Derek was such a great guy, such a devoted husband, when he was actually a complete fraud. For 2 weeks I said nothing. I avoided Derek completely, took different routes through the office, ate lunch in my car. But the guilt was eating me alive. Then it got worse. Derek apparently noticed I'd been avoiding him, because one morning he cornered me by the coffee machine. "Hey Sarah, you've been pretty scarce lately. Everything okay?" His tone was friendly but his eyes were searching, calculating. I mumbled something about being busy with projects and tried to leave, but he stepped slightly to the side, blocking my path in a way that seemed casual but definitely wasn't. "You sure? You seem stressed. If something's bothering you, you can talk to me, you know. We're all friends here." There was something in the way he said it, a slight edge beneath the friendliness that made my skin crawl. He knew. Somehow he knew that I knew. Maybe he'd seen me in the stairwell after all, or maybe Monica had mentioned noticing someone. I don't know. But in that moment, I realized I wasn't just carrying a secret anymore. I was carrying a threat to his perfect image and he was trying to gauge how much danger I posed. I told him everything was fine and practically fled to the bathroom, where I locked myself in a stall and tried to calm down. This was spiraling. I hadn't even done anything and already I felt trapped. That weekend I made a decision. I couldn't keep living with this knowledge, and I couldn't confront Derek directly because what would that accomplish? So I did something that probably makes me a terrible person. I found Jessica Hammond on social media. It wasn't hard. Derek had mentioned her full name dozens of times, and she had a public Instagram account filled with pictures of their life together. Photos of their golden retriever, their recent trip to wine country, dinner parties with friends. She looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy. And I was about to destroy that. I spent an entire Sunday crafting and recrafting a message to her. How do you tell a stranger that her husband is cheating? How do you word that without sounding crazy or malicious? In the end, I kept it simple and anonymous. I created a burner email account and sent her a brief message explaining that I worked with Derek, that I'd accidentally witnessed him with another woman, and that I was telling her because I'd want to know if I were in her position. I included the date, time, and location. No assumptions, no accusations, just facts. Then I hit send before I could change my mind and immediately felt like I was going to throw up. For 3 days nothing happened. I started to think maybe she hadn't seen the email, or maybe she had and decided to ignore it. Then on Wednesday morning all hell broke loose. Derek stormed into the office looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, and his usually charming expression had been replaced with something cold and furious. He made a beeline straight for my desk. I saw him coming and my stomach dropped to my feet. "You," he hissed, loud enough that several people looked up from their cubicles. "You destroyed my fucking marriage." I opened my mouth to respond but no sound came out. He slammed his hands on my desk, making my coffee cup jump. "Jessica got some anonymous email about me and Monica, and she's filing for divorce. She's filing for divorce because some coward couldn't mind their own goddamn business." My face must have betrayed something, some flicker of guilt or recognition, because his eyes narrowed. "It was you, wasn't it? I knew you'd been acting weird. What, you saw us one time and decided to play hero? Decided to ruin 2 families because you're some kind of self-righteous bitch?" People were staring now. Full-on staring. Monica had appeared from around the corner, her face pale. Our manager, Brian, came rushing over. "Derek, that's completely inappropriate. You need to calm down right now or I'm calling security." But Derek wasn't done. He turned to address the growing crowd of onlookers. "Sarah Chin here decided she has the right to interfere in other people's marriages. She sent my wife some bullshit anonymous email and now my whole life is falling apart." He turned back to me and I saw actual hatred in his eyes. "I hope you're proud of yourself." Brian physically stepped between us. "Derek, my office now. Sarah, take the rest of the day off. We'll sort this out." I grabbed my bag with shaking hands and basically ran out of the building. I sat in my car in the parking garage, the same garage where this nightmare had started, and cried. Not because Derek had yelled at me but because part of me wondered if he was right. Had I destroyed his marriage? Or had he destroyed it himself by cheating? The rest of that week was a blur. I worked from home while HR conducted an investigation into the incident. I gave my statement about what I'd witnessed and why I'd contacted Jessica. Derek gave his statement, probably painting me as some kind of vindictive troublemaker. Monica apparently broke down crying during her interview and admitted everything. The affair had been going on for 8 months. 8 months. By Friday, both Derek and Monica had been issued formal warnings for inappropriate workplace conduct, but weren't fired because, technically, what they did wasn't against company policy as long as it didn't affect their work. I was told to return to the office Monday, that everything would be handled professionally. Sure. Right. Professional. That's exactly what the next few weeks were. Except they weren't. Derek had turned into a complete nightmare. He started this whisper campaign against me. I'd walk into the break room and conversations would stop. People I'd been friendly with suddenly acted distant. I overheard someone say I was one of those people who can't handle seeing others happy, and another person call me a homewrecker, which made 0 sense since I wasn't the one having the affair. Derek played his part perfectly. He went around the office looking devastated, telling everyone who'd listened that his marriage was over because of a misunderstanding, that Sarah Chin had taken something out of context and run with it. He painted himself as the victim of a vindictive coworker who had some kind of vendetta. And people believed him. Because he was charismatic and well-liked and I was quiet and kept to myself. It's easier to believe the popular guy than the loner, I guess. Monica, meanwhile, had taken a leave of absence. Rumor was her husband had found out and she was dealing with her own divorce. But somehow I was still the villain in this story. The stress was destroying me. I started having panic attacks before work. I'd sit in my car for 20 minutes trying to psyche myself up to walk into that building. My work quality suffered. I couldn't concentrate. Every time I saw Derek, my heart would start racing. He never confronted me directly again after that first blow-up, but he didn't need to. His presence was enough. Then, about 2 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. I got a message on LinkedIn from someone named Amanda Torres. The message was brief: "You don't know me, but I know Derek Hammond. We need to talk. It's important." My first thought was that this was some kind of trap, maybe a friend of Derek's trying to get dirt on me or set me up somehow. But something about the message felt genuine, urgent. I responded cautiously, asking who she was and what this was about. Her reply came within minutes: "I'm Derek's wife. His other wife. The one in Seattle. I saw your name mentioned in some documents during my own divorce proceedings. I think you deserve to know the truth about who you're dealing with." I read that message 5 times, each time thinking I must have misunderstood. His other wife. What the hell did that mean? I suggested we talk on the phone, and Amanda agreed. We scheduled a call for that evening. When my phone rang at 7 p.m., I answered with shaking hands. The voice on the other end was calm, measured, but I could hear the exhaustion underneath. "Thank you for talking to me, Sarah. I know this is going to sound insane, but I need you to hear me out." For the next hour, Amanda Torres told me a story that made my situation with Derek look like a minor inconvenience. She had married Derek Hammond 7 years ago in Seattle, where he worked under a slightly different name, Derek J. Hammond, for a tech startup. They had a daughter together, now 5 years old. About 2 years into their marriage, Derek started traveling frequently for work, or so he said. Long trips to Portland, sometimes 2 weeks at a time. Amanda thought he was climbing the corporate ladder, being a provider. She had no reason to suspect anything else. Until one day she got a call from a hospital in Portland. Derek had been in a car accident, nothing serious, but they'd called his emergency contact, which was apparently some woman named Jessica. When Amanda showed up at the hospital, confused and terrified, she found out that Derek had a whole other life. Another wife, another home, another identity. Jessica had been his college sweetheart, or so she'd thought. They'd gotten married 5 years ago, right around the time Derek married Amanda. He'd been living a double life, splitting his time between Seattle and Portland, telling each woman he traveled for work. 2 wives, 2 homes, 2 complete separate existences. But wait, Amanda said, her voice breaking slightly. It gets worse. During the divorce proceedings, her lawyer had dug deeper. Turns out there was a third woman. Another marriage, this one in Sacramento, to someone named Rebecca Chin. Yes, Chin like my last name. 3 wives. 3 separate legal marriages somehow, probably using slight variations of his identity and exploiting gaps in background check systems. Derek Hammond was living 3 complete lives, and he'd managed to keep all the plates spinning for years. Amanda's divorce had just finalized. She'd been awarded full custody of their daughter because Derek had disappeared rather than fight it. He'd abandoned that life entirely to focus on his Portland existence with Jessica. But then I'd blown up the Portland life too by exposing his affair with Monica. "I wanted you to know," Amanda said, "because when I found out about Jessica, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I hadn't been good enough. Maybe if I'd been more attentive he wouldn't have strayed. But this isn't about us. Derek is a con artist. He's a pathological liar who uses people and discards them. You didn't destroy his marriage. He was never actually married in any real sense. He was just playing house with multiple families, and you happened to be the one who finally pulled the curtain back." I sat there in stunned silence after she finished. 3 wives. 3 separate lives. How was that even possible? How had no one figured this out sooner? "I have proof," Amanda continued. "Court documents from my divorce, photos, email exchanges. I can send them to you. I've also been in contact with Rebecca, the third wife. She's in an even worse position because she has 2 kids with him, and he cleaned out their joint bank account before vanishing. We're working with lawyers to track him down because he owes child support to 2 families now, possibly 3 if Jessica was pregnant, I don't know. But I wanted to reach out to you specifically because Jessica mentioned your name when we spoke. She said you were the one who sent her the email about the affair, and she wanted me to tell you thank you. You saved her from wasting more years on a fraud." My head was spinning. Why didn't Jessica reach out herself? "She's not in a good place right now," Amanda said gently. "Finding out about me and Rebecca broke something in her. She's staying with her parents trying to process everything. But she made me promise to tell you that you did the right thing. We all wish someone had told us sooner." After I hung up, I just sat there in the dark of my living room trying to process what I just learned. Derek Hammond wasn't just a cheater. He was something far more disturbing. The next morning, I went to HR with everything Amanda had sent me. Court documents proving Derek's marriage to Amanda Torres. photos of him with their daughter. Email exchanges where he discussed his business trips to Portland. Screenshots of his correspondence with Rebecca Chen in Sacramento, including photos of their 2 children. And documentation of his fraud, using slight variations of his identity to obtain multiple marriage licenses. HR's faces went pale as they reviewed the evidence. This wasn't just inappropriate workplace conduct anymore. This was potentially criminal. Identity fraud. Bigamy in multiple states. Financial fraud if he'd been collecting benefits or making false declarations. They told me they'd need to consult with legal and get back to me. I left that meeting feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The truth was out, and it was so much bigger than anyone had imagined. By afternoon, Derek had been escorted from the building by security. His desk was cleaned out. An all-staff email went out about personnel changes, without naming him specifically, but everyone knew. The whisper campaign against me stopped immediately as the real story spread. Turns out people are a lot less sympathetic to the charming guy when they find out he's been juggling 3 wives and abandoned his kids. Monica came back from her leave of absence looking like she'd aged 10 years. She apologized to me in the break room one day, crying, saying she'd had no idea about Derek's other lives, that he'd told her he and Jessica were separated and that she'd been a fool. I told her I wasn't the one she needed to apologize to, but I didn't say it meanly. We were both victims of Derek's manipulation in different ways. Yesterday I got another message, this time from Jessica directly. She thanked me for exposing the affair, said that if I hadn't sent that email she might have spent years more with Derek before discovering the truth. She told me that she, Amanda, and Rebecca were coordinating their legal efforts to hold Derek accountable. They tracked him to somewhere in Texas, where he'd apparently started using yet another name. The authorities were involved now. She said something that's been stuck in my mind: you saw something wrong and you spoke up even though it cost you. That takes courage most people don't have. Derek tried to make you the villain because that's what manipulators do when they're caught. But you were never the villain, Sarah. You were just honest, and sometimes honesty feels like cruelty to people who live in lies. I'm writing this now because I need to process everything that's happened. 3 months ago I was just trying to grab a phone charger from my car. Now I'm somehow tangled up in what might be one of the most elaborate deception schemes I've ever heard of. Derek accused me of destroying his marriage, and maybe in a technical sense I did. But his marriage was built on lies. 3 marriages all built on lies. He was living an entire fake life, juggling families like they were side projects, abandoning children when the charade became too complicated. And he had the audacity to call me self-righteous for exposing a fraction of his fraud. The worst part? I still see his face sometimes when I close my eyes. That moment when he slammed his hands on my desk and called me a coward. The hatred in his eyes. He genuinely believed he was the victim in all of this. That's what sociopaths do, I guess. They rewrite reality until they're always the hero of their own story, no matter how many people they hurt. My therapist says I did the right thing. My friends say I did the right thing. Jessica, Amanda, and Rebecca say I did the right thing. But I still have moments where I wonder if I should have just stayed silent. If I kept my mouth shut, would I still have my peaceful, quiet life? Would Derek still be spinning his web of lies, but at least I wouldn't be losing sleep over it? These are the questions that hit me at 3 in the morning when I can't sleep. But then I remember the 5-year-old girl in Seattle who deserves to have her father held accountable. I remember the 2 kids in Sacramento whose college fund was stolen by their own dad. I remember Jessica's voice breaking when she thanked me for saving her from wasting more years. And I remember that doing the right thing isn't supposed to feel easy. It's supposed to feel necessary. The office has mostly moved on now. There's new gossip, new drama. Someone in sales got promoted over someone else and there's resentment. Standard workplace stuff. Normal stuff. But people look at me differently now. Some with respect, some with wariness, like I'm the person who'll expose secrets if given the chance. I'm not sure how I feel about that reputation. I never wanted to be the office whistleblower. I just wanted to do my job and go home. Last week I got a coffee from a new barista at the cafe near work, and when I gave my name she looked at me strangely. Sarah Chin? Are you the one from that bigamy case? I saw it on the news. My stomach dropped. It was on the news? Apparently, Derek's story had made local headlines. Portland man arrested for bigamy, fraud charges across 3 states. They didn't name me specifically, but they mentioned that a coworker's report had initiated the investigation that unraveled his schemes. Great. Just great. Now I wasn't just office gossip, I was local news gossip. The barista, thankfully, seemed impressed rather than judgmental. That took guts, she said, handing me my latte. Most people would have looked the other way. I mumbled a thanks and left quickly, but her words stayed with me. Most people would have looked the other way. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's why Derek got away with it for so long. Because people see things, suspect things, but convince themselves it's not their problem. It's easier to look away than to deal with the fallout of truth. I've been thinking a lot about that lately. About complicity through silence. About how many people might have seen signs of Derek's deception over the years but dismissed them because it was easier than confronting an uncomfortable reality. His coworkers in Seattle, his neighbors in Sacramento, the people at our firm who maybe noticed inconsistencies in his stories but never pressed him on them. We're all so trained to mind our own business, to not rock the boat, that we let boats full of lies sail right past us. Amanda called me again last week. She wanted to update me on the legal proceedings. Derek had been arrested in Austin, Texas, where he'd apparently started a relationship with a fourth woman, though thankfully he hadn't married her yet. He was facing multiple charges: bigamy in 3 states, identity fraud, wire fraud for using false information to obtain credit cards and loans, and child abandonment. The prosecution was building a case that could put him away for years. "I never thought I'd be grateful to someone I've never met," Amanda said, her voice thick with emotion. "But you started this avalanche, Sarah. You saw something wrong and you refused to let it slide. My daughter is going to grow up knowing her mom fought for what was right, and that's because of you." I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't feel like a hero. Heroes are supposed to feel good about their choices, aren't they? I just feel tired. And sad. Sad for Jessica, who thought she'd married her soulmate. Sad for Amanda, who trusted a man who saw her as just one piece of a larger game. Sad for Rebecca, who's now a single mother of 2 trying to rebuild a life that was gutted by fraud. Sad for those kids who'll grow up with a father in prison for being a monster in a charming mask. Rebecca reached out to me too, though her message was shorter, more direct. "Thank you for exposing him. I wish I'd known sooner. I wish someone had told me years ago. But at least now I know the truth and I can move forward." That phrase keeps coming up. I wish I'd known sooner. It makes me wonder about all the people in the world living in lies right now, unaware that their entire reality is built on deception. How many other directs are out there, juggling multiple lives, counting on people's reluctance to get involved? The thought is terrifying. Work has settled into a new normal. Monica and I have developed a strange kind of friendship, bonded by our shared experience of Derek's manipulation. She told me her divorce was finalized, that her ex-husband Tim had gotten custody of the twins because she'd admitted to the affair. She sees them every other weekend now. "I destroyed my family for a man who was destroying multiple families," she said one day over lunch, staring at her salad like it held answers. How do I come back from that? I didn't have an answer for her. How do any of us come back from the choices we make? How do we reconcile the person we thought we were with the person we turned out to be when tested? I've been seeing my therapist twice a week now instead of once. We talk about boundaries, about the difference between helping and fixing, about how I can't save everyone from their own bad decisions. She reminds me that I didn't create Derek's chaos, I just exposed it. But exposure feels like creation sometimes, doesn't it? Like opening Pandora's box. Once you let the truth out, you can't control where it goes or who it hurts. My parents called after seeing the news story. They're immigrants from Taiwan, and they have very strong opinions about causing trouble at work. My mother lectured me for 20 minutes about keeping my head down and not inviting problems. My father was quieter, but I could hear the disappointment in his voice. They think I should have stayed silent, that it wasn't my place to interfere in someone else's marriage. Family business is family business, my mother said firmly. Not your concern. I tried to explain about the bigamy, the fraud, the abandoned children. She just sighed. Still not your concern, Shu Hui. She only uses my Chinese name when she's really upset with me. Now you have reputation as troublemaker. This will follow you. Maybe she's right. Maybe this will follow me. Maybe every job interview from now on, someone will Google my name and find articles about the bigamy case. Maybe I'll always be that woman who exposed her coworker. But what's the alternative? Being that woman who knew and said nothing? I got an email yesterday from Jessica. She's in therapy now, processing the trauma of discovering that her entire marriage was a lie. She said she goes back and forth between rage and grief, sometimes feeling both at once until she can't breathe. But she wanted me to know something. She started a blog about her experience. Not for revenge, but to help other people who might be experiencing similar deceptions. Red flags to watch for. Resources for people dealing with fraud and bigamy. A community for survivors. You gave me my life back, she wrote. Now I'm trying to help others get theirs back too. We're turning Derek's destruction into something constructive. Amanda, Rebecca, and I, we're not just victims anymore. We're advocates. That made me cry. Ugly, messy crying in my car before work. Because that's what this was all for, wasn't it? Not punishment, not revenge, but truth. Truth so that people can make informed choices about their lives. Truth so that children aren't abandoned by fathers who see them as inconveniences. Truth so that the next woman Derek tried to con would find Jessica's blog and realize she was dealing with a predator. Brian, my manager, pulled me aside last week for a performance review. I expected criticism, maybe a warning about my productivity drop during the chaos. Instead, he said, "I want to apologize. When Derek first made those accusations against you, I didn't know what to believe. I should have trusted you more. Should have investigated properly before letting him terrorize you in this office." I appreciated the apology even though it didn't erase those weeks of hell. "I'm implementing new policies," he continued. "Mandatory reporting for workplace relationships that could create conflicts of interest. Better support systems for employees who report misconduct. And anonymous hotlines for people who see something concerning. What happened to you shouldn't happen to anyone. You did the right thing and got punished for it. That's on me as much as it's on Derek." It felt good to hear, even if it was too late for my situation. Maybe the next person who sees something wrong won't have to go through what I went through. Maybe they'll have support instead of suspicion. I've been looking at new job opportunities. Not because I'm running away, but because I think I need a fresh start somewhere that doesn't have Derek's ghost lurking in every corner. Somewhere I can just be Sarah the graphic designer, not Sarah who exposed the bigamist. A few companies have reached out, which is encouraging. One recruiter even mentioned seeing the news story and being impressed by my integrity. "We need people who do the right thing even when it's hard," she said. Maybe my mother is wrong. Maybe this won't destroy my reputation. Maybe it'll actually help it in the long run. I saw Monica yesterday in the parking garage, ironically the same place where this all started. She was getting into her car looking exhausted. We made eye contact and for a moment I thought she'd pretend she didn't see me. But instead she walked over. "I'm leaving the company," she said quietly. "Taking a job in Denver. Fresh start." "That's probably good," I replied, meaning it. "Yeah. I need to rebuild my relationship with my kids, and I can't do that here with everyone knowing what I did. But before I go, I wanted to say something." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You were right to expose us. I was so angry at you at first, so hurt and embarrassed. But you were right. Derek and I were destroying multiple families, and we were so wrapped up in our own selfish desires that we couldn't see it. Or didn't want to see it. You forced us to see it. You forced everyone to see it. And as much as that hurt, I needed it. My kids needed it. So thank you, even though I'm sure you don't want my thanks." I watched her drive away, wondering if I'd ever see her again. Probably not. We were connected by trauma and bad choices, but that's not enough to build a real friendship on. Some people come into your life to teach you lessons, not to stay. The trial date for Derek's criminal charges was set for next month. I might have to testify about what I saw in the stairwell, about the timeline of events. My lawyer says my testimony could be crucial in establishing his pattern of deception and showing he was continuing to engage in fraudulent behavior even while married to multiple women. I'm nervous about it. About seeing Derek again, about reliving everything in a courtroom, about having my actions picked apart by defense attorneys trying to paint me as some kind of vindictive troublemaker. But I'll do it. Because those 3 women and their children deserve justice. Last night, I did something I haven't done in months. I went out with friends. Real friends, not work acquaintances, people who've known me since college and don't care about office drama. We went to a comedy show and for 2 hours I laughed until my sides hurt. I didn't think about Derek or Jessica or any of it. I just existed in the moment, being normal, being myself. Afterward, my friend Kate asked me how I was really doing. Not the polite, fine we tell acquaintances, but the real answer. "I'm surviving," I told her honestly. "Some days are harder than others. But I think I did the right thing even if the right thing nearly broke me." Kate squeezed my hand. "The right thing usually costs us something. That's how you know it's right. If it was easy, everyone would do it." Maybe that's the truth I've been looking for. Maybe the measure of doing the right thing isn't how good it makes you feel, but how much you're willing to sacrifice for it. I sacrificed my peace, my reputation for a while, my sense of safety at work. But 3 women and 5 children got their truth because of it. That has to count for something. I've started journaling more, processing everything through writing. My therapist suggested it and it actually helps. Getting the thoughts out of my head and onto paper makes them less overwhelming. I write about the guilt I still feel sometimes, The what-ifs that plague me, the anger at Derek for putting me in this position. But I also write about the strength I didn't know I had. The courage it took to send that first email to Jessica. The resilience it took to keep showing up to work when everyone was whispering about me. The integrity it took to go to HR with evidence even when I could have just let sleeping dogs lie. I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago. That Sarah was quiet, risk-averse, someone who colored within the lines and never made waves. This Sarah knows what it feels like to be hated for doing the right thing. This Sarah understands that integrity has a price and sometimes you have to pay it anyway. This Sarah is stronger, even if she's also more tired. Amanda sent me a photo yesterday. It was of her daughter, Emma, blowing out candles on a birthday cake. She turned 6 last week. The text read, "First birthday without Derek, and honestly it was better. She's doing well in therapy, processing the abandonment. But she knows her mom fought for her. That matters." I looked at that little girl's face, smiling at her cake, surrounded by people who loved her authentically, not manipulatively. And I thought, this is why. This is why I couldn't stay silent. Because this child deserves a life built on truth, not lies. Because all those kids deserve better than a father who sees them as props in his elaborate performance of normalcy. The criminal trial starts in 3 weeks. Derek's lawyer has been sending aggressive letters, trying to intimidate witnesses. My lawyer says it's a desperate tactic, that the evidence against Derek is overwhelming. 3 marriage licenses under slight variations of his name. Financial records showing him maintaining separate households in 3 states. Testimony from all 3 wives about his patterns of deception. Credit card fraud, identity fraud, child abandonment charges. He's looking at serious prison time. I wonder what he thinks about at night, sitting in whatever jail cell they're keeping him in. Does he feel remorse? Does he understand the magnitude of what he's done? Or does he still see himself as the victim, the misunderstood man whose only crime was loving too much? Narcissists like Derek rarely develop genuine self-awareness. They're too invested in their own mythology. Jessica's blog has gained a surprising following. Thousands of people sharing their own stories of deception and fraud in relationships. She's created something meaningful from her pain, a resource that might save others from going through what she went through. She interviewed me for the blog last week, asking me about my perspective as the person who exposed the affair. I talked about the guilt, the fear, the backlash. But I also talked about the responsibility we have to each other as human beings. We can't save everyone, but we can speak up when we see someone being harmed. We can choose truth over comfort. We can refuse to be complicit in other people's lies. The interview went up yesterday and my inbox exploded with messages from strangers. Most were supportive, thanking me for my courage. A few were critical, calling me a snitch or a homewrecker, even with all the context. You can't please everyone, I'm learning. Some people will always find a way to make you the villain, especially if acknowledging your heroism means confronting their own cowardice. But enough people see the truth that I'm starting to believe it myself. I didn't destroy Derek's marriage. I revealed that it was already destroyed, built on a foundation of lies that was always going to collapse eventually. I just happened to be the person holding the flashlight when the cracks became visible. My new job starts in 2 weeks. It's with a smaller boutique design firm that specializes in nonprofit work. The pay is slightly less, but the mission feels right. Helping organizations that do good work tell their stories effectively. Using my skills for something meaningful. The founder of the firm told me during the interview that she'd read about my situation, and it actually made her want to hire me more. We need people with strong moral compasses, she said. People who won't compromise their values for convenience. That's rare and it's valuable. I start February 1st. A new job, a new chapter, a new version of myself. The old Sarah would have been terrified of such a big change. This Sarah is ready. I'm not going to pretend this experience didn't change me, because it did. I'm warier now, more careful about who I trust. I look at charming people with suspicion, wondering what they're hiding behind those easy smiles. I second-guess my own judgment constantly, worrying that I'll misread a situation or make things worse by getting involved. But I'm also braver. I know what I'm capable of now. I know I can withstand public criticism and personal attacks. I know I can do the hard thing even when every fiber of my being wants to take the easy way out. I know my values aren't just abstract concepts, but things I'm actually willing to suffer for. That's not nothing. The trial is in 2 weeks. I'll wear a professional outfit, probably my navy suit that makes me look older and more authoritative. I'll answer the lawyer's questions honestly and completely. I'll look Derek in the eye if I have to, and I won't let him see how much he scared me. I'll be strong for Jessica, for Amanda, for Rebecca, for Emma and those other children who need the adults in their lives to stand up for truth. And then after the trial, I'll move forward. I'll start my new job. I'll continue therapy. I'll maybe even start dating again, though the thought of trusting someone after seeing what Derek did to 3 women is terrifying. But I'll try. Because Derek doesn't get to steal my faith in humanity. He doesn't get that much power over my life. Last night I did something symbolic. I went back to that parking garage, to the stairwell where I'd seen Derek and Monica. I stood there in the silence, remembering that moment when my life split into before and after. And I said out loud to no one but myself, I'm glad I looked. I'm glad I saw. I'm glad I spoke up. Then I left and I didn't look back. Because that chapter is closing. The trial will be the epilogue, the final accounting of Derek's crimes. But my story, my real story, is just beginning. I'm Sarah Chin. I'm a graphic designer who saw something wrong and refused to look away. I'm someone who chose integrity over comfort, truth over popularity, courage over fear. I'm someone who knows the cost of doing the right thing and decided it was worth paying. And if I had to do it all over again, knowing everything I know now about the pain and the backlash and the stress, I'd still send that email. Because Jessica, Amanda, and Rebecca deserve to know the truth. Because those 5 children deserve to have their father held accountable. Because sometimes one person speaking up is all it takes to bring down an empire of lies. Derek Hammond accused me of destroying his marriage. He was wrong. I didn't destroy anything. I just refused to help him keep building his house of cards. And when it finally collapsed under the weight of its own deception, he tried to blame me for the rubble. But I'm not responsible for the destruction he caused. I'm only responsible for telling the truth. And I'd do it again. Subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more cases like this one.